Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. This is a special edition for me because I'm going to be talking about my love-hate relationship with the band Genesis. And why do I say that? Because from 1973 to around 1978, Genesis was my second favorite band behind the Rolling Stones. And I mean, I loved Genesis to every cell in my body, and still do love those original albums from around 73, even in 1980. I loved Genesis with every inch of my body. I mean, I know every song, I know every note, I know every lyric. And then I fell out of love with Genesis. Now, I never hated Genesis, and I still bought every album. In fact, I have 57 Genesis albums, which I'm about to show you. But I'm going to talk about my relationship with Genesis and my love with them and slight downfall later on. It all started in 1973. I was 10 years old, and when I was 10 years old, I already had a great music collection and was really into really good music because I had an older sister. 1973, my dad comes home from work. He had a friend who worked at Buddha Records. And one day he came home from work with a pile of some records and brought them home for me and my sister. And we sat there at the table very excited, and we decided to split them up. She chose one, and I chose one. She chose one, and I chose one. And two of the albums that I chose were these. This is the first pressing original version of Genesis Foxtrot. US, of course. Now, why did I have that? Because Buddha Records distributed the famous Charisma label in America. So this is a first copy, first pressing of Foxtrot when it came out. Now, this album came out in 72. I got it in 73, but this is the first pressing. There's famous Charisma label. In fact, the sleeve, I think, it says Pleasure from the Buddha Group. At the same time, I picked up this album, strictly because of the artwork. I never heard of Genesis. My sister, who was 4 years older, never heard of Genesis. In the United States, relatively unknown. And this, of course, is Nursery Cryme. Amazing artwork. So I chose these two albums. Again, this is the first pressing on vinyl. In fact, I think the label on this was mispressed. I don't know if you could see it. It's all blurry. They did not do a good job pressing that one. So I picked up these two albums in 1973 because my dad brought them home, and I loved the artwork. And I played Foxtrot and Nursery Cryme in 1973 to death. The greatest music I've ever heard in my life. To this day, I could listen to those albums at any time. I know every note. It just strikes me to the core. And from there, I bought Sell in England, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in 75 when it came out, and continued with A Trick of the Trail, etc. And then, so it's one of the few times I was what you'd call an early adopter. I was into Genesis really early. In fact, check this out. Here's an original ad publicizing Foxtrot. I mean, this is from a magazine, trade magazine. So, pretty cool stuff. I have really cool art guides that I'm going to start showing in my videos. So I fell in love with Foxtrot, Nursery Cryme, and Genesis. But let me talk about Genesis, and I guess people like ranking the albums, so I'm going to rank their albums from my least favorite to my most favorite, and then talk about my experience, and I'll show you some original ads and cool things that I have. And hopefully you'll enjoy the video. So what's my least favorite Genesis album? Well, that would be this one. I have multiple copies of all the Genesis albums on vinyl, CD, digitally remastered CD 5.1. This is from the box set. This is my least favorite Genesis album, We Can't Dance. Like I said, I have all the Genesis albums. I can't even tell you much about this album. And the reason why, to me, is Genesis at this point, obviously they're one of the world's biggest bands. They're selling out stadiums multiple nights, but they're not Genesis to me. They lost their uniqueness. They lost what made them unique, their sound, their melodicism, their heavy keyboard, Mellotron. Um, Obviously, I'm not even saying because Peter Gabriel left, because I love the first couple of albums with Phil Collins, which you'll see. But here, to me, they're just another really big pop rock band. Um, and I'm not against Phil Collins. I think he's an amazing drummer. I even like some of his solo stuff. But Jesus, He Knows Me, and No Son of Mine, great videos. It's not unique. It's just a really good pop rock band. With that said, like the title track, well, sort of the title track, I Can't Dance, like I can't stand that song. Um, and I never would think I would ever get to a point where I can't stand Genesis songs. There's a bunch that I can't stand, and that's one of them. So this is my least played album by Genesis, and that's why it's my least favorite, because it's just nothing with nothing. I mean, I know it's got Fading Lights on there, which is supposedly an old return to the old Genesis sound. Not really to me. That's my least favorite. What would be my next least favorite? Let's go to the box set here, and that would be this one. Really big popular album from them, Abacab. And I bought all their albums when they came out, not in retrospect. So when Abacab came out, I bought it. And now the band's becoming a pretty big band. Not a stadium selling band, but certainly they could sell multiple nights at like the Garden Coliseum kind of thing. And no reply at all with the horn section. I'm like, yeah, it's a good kind of pop song, but that's not the Genesis that I fell in love with. I'm not a big fan of the title track, Abacab. It's okay. Keep It Dark's okay. Who Done It is another one, which is possibly my most hated song by any band ever, and that's coming from a Genesis fanatic. I mean, Who Done It? I don't even know how to made the album, and then they played that live. I couldn't believe it. Is it terrible? No, because there's no such thing as a terrible Genesis album. And there's a bunch of people out there watching, hopefully, that this is the Genesis that you love. And I appreciate it because you love a really good pop rock band. And Genesis became a huge, mega selling, pop rock band. But what makes Genesis special, especially in the prog circles, which I love, is nobody ever sounded like Genesis. And this, like Abacab, could be, in my opinion, virtually a lot of bands. So not a huge fan of it. But, I saw them live. This is a Laserdisc. Three Sides Live is recorded from that tour. Right? And there's Who Done It. How the hell did Who Done It make it on the Laserdisc? But that's kind of cool. But, in fact, that's recorded from the Nassau Coliseum, I believe, which is, I'm in New York, Long Island. So that was the place to see those shows for me. All right, let's continue. What's my third least favorite Genesis album? That would be the self-titled album called Genesis. I guess they self-titled it because it was a new beginning in a sense. Hate the artwork, and I love Genesis artwork, but that doesn't do much for me. And, again, it's just, there's songs on here that I can't stand. I can't stand That's All. It's just a pop novelty that does nothing for me. Illegal Alien, I can't stand. And that's probably why these are on it, because there's songs that I actually can't stand. I think Mom is a really cool atmospheric track, and it's kind of like, here's what it is. It's kind of like Genesis trying to get back to their old Genesis sound in a sense. And it's a spooky, really cool track, but it's still so different than that original Genesis. They just changed so much. But this album, some of the more poppy songs I actually like. Taking It All Too Hard, I think, is a really great song. Just a Job to Do is decent kind of pop rocker. And of course, they have Home by the Sea and Second Home by the Sea, which is their kind of return to progressive. But Genesis is more than a progressive band, and none of these albums sound like that great Genesis that I love. My fourth least favorite Genesis album may surprise some people because it gets trashed by pretty much everybody, and I get that. But personally, I don't think they should have done it. This is Calling All Stations, the album that they did after Phil Collins left with Ray Wilson. It was kind of obviously, Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford trying to return to that classic kind of Genesis sound from the old days. but it's just odd because Ray Wilson's voice sounds so different, and it sounds like maybe Genesis trying to be Genesis with a different singer. It doesn't really work. I guess they were just kind of desperate, and obviously it was not a success, at least here in the United States, and that was the end of the band, at least releasing records. But with that said, if it wasn't Genesis, there's some decent stuff on this album. Even the single Congo, it's really not Genesis in my mind, but it's still pretty good. But there's a couple of great songs on this. In fact, here's a CD single of a song called Shipwrecked, and I love that track. It's just a really great, pretty ballad with some great atmospheric sounds. Terrific tune. And if you never heard Shipwrecked, again, is it great Genesis? No, because the vocals sound so different. But it's a really good tune. Not About Us is another really pretty song. The Dividing Line is a good kind of progressive rocker. There must be some other way. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. But with that said, in retrospect, do I think they should have done it? Probably not. It doesn't help their legacy at all. But that's the story with that one. I would still listen to that more than I would ever listen to like Abacab or We Can't Dance or even the self-titled album. All right, we'll continue. And what's the next one that is in my lesser favorite records is this humongous seller, Invisible Touch. Out of these batches that are these latter day mega selling records, this would be the one that I would listen to more than any of those is Invisible Touch. This has got some really good commercial tracks that I think still work. Tonight, Tonight, Tonight is really good. Land of Confusion is great video and a great song. Into Deep's really good. Throwing It All Away, I think, is great. Domino has that classic kind of, trying to go back to a certain extent with that prog kind of epic, and it's not bad. But I think the Brazilian is an amazing instrumental. The last song is just killer. The title track, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was like a #1 hit. I can't stand that song. I mean, I could never play the title track Invisible Touch. I hate that song. But there you go. Invisible Touch. Let's now go into Genesis that I really start to really like before I get into the classic stuff that's in my core. The next up that I would really like, actually is a kind of a cool release. Where is it? From Genesis to Revelation. There's a lot of variations of this. I do not have the original vinyl of this. I've seen bootleg copies of it, but this is a good version on CD because it's got a ton of bonus tracks. So this is the first Genesis album before Steve Hackett, before Phil Collins. A lot of people like to call it like a Bee Gees pastiche. I kind of get it, but not really. It's an interesting album. There's a lot of really good songs on this album, but they're almost like demo quality. They're so lo-fi. They don't have the balls of the latter-day Genesis, but there's a lot of really good songs. The Silent Sun is great, Where the Sour Turns to Sweet, In the Beginning, Am I Very Wrong, In the Wilderness. They're all good songs that have really good potential. I always kind of felt if Genesis would have gone back with Peter Gabriel and Steve Hackett and Phil Collins went back and did these songs and really boosted them, some of them could have been really special. This is really for a hardcore Genesis fan, and you want to hear what Genesis sounded like in their infancy. I mean, they were like 20 years old or something like that. They were in college when they made that album at Charterhouse. So you think of it that way, it shows you how great their potential was and how melodic they could be. So it's pretty cool. If you're a Genesis fan of the early classic stuff, you need to hear that stuff, and you could hear that on the archive box set. This is a cool box. Taking a little detour here, but this was the first archive box, and there's a whole disc of that stuff remastered, plus Lamb Lies Down on Broadway live on here, plus a whole bunch of demos. This is a cool box if you're a big Genesis fan. All right, let's continue from least favorite to favorite. 1980 is when they put out Duke. Um, this was an album that I did really like, but it was the first Genesis album I bought where I was like, "There's no way this album's going top three." I always do my top three favorite albums of the year, and Genesis has had a number of top three albums for me. And this was the first time where I was like, "Yeah, this is a good record. I really like it, but there's no shot." They were just becoming now for me in 1980 a band that I really really love or really like, but they were losing that specialness to me at this point. But this is a still a really good record. This is a pretty big album in the sense that Phil Collins was really coming out of his shadow at this point. Phil, amazing drummer, amazing musician, great singer. I had no problem when he took over for Peter Gabriel. But here's the first album that he really started writing, and I actually thought his tracks, "Alone Tonight" and "Please Don't Ask," are really phenomenal tracks. I love them. They're beautiful, heartfelt. Obviously, he was going through a terrible time with his marriage, and he was putting it down in music and in lyrics, and you feel it. Those are, to me, really special tracks. I'm not a huge fan of Behind the Lines. That was kind of the hit. I know Tony Banks thinks Duchess is the best thing they ever did. I don't. Misunderstanding was the big hit. It's a good track. Turn It On Again, another good track. But again, they're losing that uniqueness that made them Genesis on this album. Duke's Travels and Duke's End is a great ending. Classic ending. Phenomenal. So this was still a really good record to me that I really, really liked. Way more than any of the ones that I listed before. But this was the first album where they were losing it a little bit to me. My next in line would be the album they did before that, which is And Then There Were Three. This was an interesting album for me at the time. It was a huge hit for the band because it had Follow You, Follow Me as the hit single. And I think Follow You, Follow Me is an amazing song. I love that track. I got no problem that it was a big hit. It deserves it. It's a great, great track. It's kind of a different album because it's the first album they did without Steve Hackett. And Steve Hackett, it was just, in my opinion, a crucial part of their sound. Steve Hackett is an amazing guitarist, but he's an amazing atmospheric guitarist. He's not a guy who's out there to play a million notes per second, even though I'm sure he can. He was doing tapping long before Eddie Van Halen was. But he's into atmosphere. He's into doing what the song requires. And a lot of the times you feel it and you hear it without noticing it. But when it's not there, you really miss it. And this album would have been, in my opinion, spectacular if it had Steve Hackett on there. I think it's really missing him. It's a half great album and a half really good record, but I still really liked it at the time. Like I said, I love Follow You, Follow Me. The second single is a song called Many Too Many, and that's an amazing, amazing song too. Beautiful, like 3.5 minute ballad that's also really, really heartfelt. This album, I call it Tony Banks' album, even though Tony Banks was probably the main songwriter of Genesis throughout their whole thing. So, but Tony Banks is all over this album. It's got a really heavy keyboard sound, and I like it. I love Tony Banks, and this album is just so keyboard heavy because they're picking up, I think, the slack that with the guitar missing Steve Hackett and Rutherford. And then there were three being Collins, Rutherford, and Banks. Rutherford does his best on there. The only real major guitar stuff on here is a song called Burning Rope, which is like classic Genesis. It's one of my favorites. And it goes slow and melodic and then builds up. And there's a great guitar solo in there that I think you could tell that Rutherford is saying, I'm going to do my best Steve Hackett impression. He does a pretty good job because it's not about a lot of notes, it's the right notes. But there's a couple of really lost tracks on here that are great. The second song is called Undertow, and the fourth song is called Snowbound. One was written by Banks, one was written by Rutherford, and they're very similar, soft with powerful choruses, with deep, you should hear those songs. Those two, Many Too Many, and of course Follow You, Follow Me. After that, the album is good, but not great. And then there were three. And I actually think, where is that stuff? This and then there were three. Yeah. They were a big band then. And this is like a concert. Yeah, I got reviews. Genesis Spectacular Concert. And they were a big band now. This is an ad. Mystical Sound, if you've never heard it. Genesis, and then there were three. Genesis on tour, and they play in Madison Square Garden. The first time they played the Garden was the Wuthering tour. Here's an ad for Many Too Many is the second single. And then the unreleased B-sides, which you can get on the other archive box set. So, kind of cool stuff, I hope you think. All right, next in line would be their second album, but their first kind of real album, I guess, which is this one. This is also an original pressing. I got this album around 74. And this is an original import version of Trespass on vinyl. You know, Genesis, their artwork was so great. And this one came with a lyric insert, I believe. This was just really cool. So, also on Famous Charisma. The thing about Trespass, when I had it on vinyl, which I still do, of course, and I listened to it on vinyl, it sounded terrible. It sounded worse than, from Genesis to Revelation, really. And I was like, this album is the worst recorded album I've ever heard. Somewhere in there is some really good songs, but you can't hear it on the vinyl. When they later reissued that album on CD and they remastered it, especially in the box set, this guy, where it's on 5.1 also, oh my God, it just blows you away. And now, so no offense, like as much as I like vinyl, when they clean these things up and remaster them on CD, they sound amazing. This album never sounded so good as it does on this remaster. It's a completely different album. It's a completely different listening experience, and it's just phenomenal. This is before they had Steve Hackett. This is before they had Phil Collins, but Anthony Phillips was a guitarist, and he was great. And it's a terrific record. I love this album. We're getting into the albums I really love now. And Visions of Angels is amazing. Dusk is like the most beautiful, glorious song when you hear it digitally remastered. The Knife, well, if you have Genesis Live, this one, what a version of the Knife is better on this. In fact, everything's better on this live album. But The Knife is an incredible track, although again better live. Looking for Someone, love how he starts that song by singing a cappella. Looking for someone. Well, not totally a cappella. Very light keyboard on there, kind of reminiscent of what he's going to start selling England by the pound later on. Just great album, but you need to hear it on digitally remastered CD. It's one of those where if you got the original vinyl like I have, it's not nearly as good. All right, now we have 6 albums left. These 6 are my favorite Genesis albums. They are 6 of my favorite albums of all time. All of them would be like Desert Island Discs for me. So at number 6 would be this album, Wind and Wuthering. The final studio album with Steve Hackett. He left. He got frustrated that he wasn't getting enough material on the albums. And, it's a bummer for me and the Genesis fans at that time because it was sorely missed. This is a spectacular record, I think. I love this album. This is the original CD version. I have it on CD. The remastered 5.1 is awesome as well. This album is just, to me, One for the Vine, which is the second song, is just one of the most intense, greatest songs of all time, and certainly Genesis songs. Your Own Special Way, which is like Rutherford on the 12-string. I've heard some people don't like it. I don't know how. I think it's a phenomenal, beautiful, pretty song. And to me, reminds me of Genesis can do commercial stuff, although they stretch that out, so it's still like 5 or 6 minutes long. But it's very commercial, but not in a sellout kind of way, and it has that Genesis sound. It's so special. Great track. Blood on the Rooftops, great acoustic tune featuring Steve Hackett, great track. Really good double instrumental, In That Quiet Earth, Unquiet Slumbers from the Sleepers, which goes into Afterglow, which is one of the most intense endings ever. What an incredible way to end this album. Um, really good pastoral classic Genesis album. Sorry to see Steve Hackett go. When they were touring for this album, that was the first time being a New Yorker, Long Islander. Here's an ad. Here, Genesis here. And they were really starting to play big shows. All arenas, big arenas, as you can see, including Madison Square Garden, right? The dream arena for every band. It's the first time they were playing the Garden. And then Steve Hackett leaves. Bummer. Okay, the next one in line for me, I think, is going to be surprising to some people. And that's going to be Selling England by the Pound. Now, Singland, I'm not doing it in retrospect. I got this album pretty early. It came out in 73. I got it in 74. So pretty close to when it came out. Most big progressive rock fans and most Genesis fans put this as the #1 greatest Genesis album. I love this album. I love this album from start to finish. So it's not like I don't love this album. But I don't get how people think it's the best Genesis album. I don't get that at all. But it's a phenomenal album. I love the artwork. This is one of the first time they remastered it on CD. Here it is, and where do I have it? Here it is in 5.1, which is all of them are these double sets in 5.1 on DVD plus bonus features. Why don't I put this as the #1 Genesis album? I don't know. I mean, I love the opening is really cool. Acapella, Dancing with the Moonlit Night. Can you tell me where my country lies? Said the uniform to his true love's eyes. It lies with me. You know, all acapella, great. Shocking kind of opening. Really different. And then it goes into the rest of the song, which is highly progressive. It's a really cool song. I like it. I love it. But I don't think it's up there with the greatest Genesis songs. I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, which is based on the cover art, so is a fun track. I've seen it live a bunch of times, and the fans seem to go crazy and love it when they play it. It's just not one of my favorite Genesis songs. You know, it's kind of their early pop hit, at least over in the UK, but I don't think it's a great song. Firth of Fifth is the really special one on this. I often quote that as probably the second or third greatest guitar solo of all time. I once had a friend come here, and I have a really great stereo system, 5.1 and all the rest, and I just cranked that up, and I said, this is an amazing guitar solo, and it's like single notes. But you play that loud and surround, you go to heaven. You literally go to heaven and see God. That's how incredible it is. And it's just the greatest example of how you don't have to play a lot of notes. You just have to play the right notes and leave spaces. And that's what Hackett specializes in. And that's what makes Firth of Fifth such an amazing song. The song itself is really, really good. The guitar solo is incredible. So if you're wondering what the greatest guitar solo is, I think it's probably like Comfortably Numb, maybe. But this is way up there. More Fool Me I Love is a nice little acoustic song sung by Phil Collins. And then you get the Battle of Epping Forest, which is kind of fun. There's a couple of live versions I have, which are kind of fun. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know, is it West Side Story? Is it The Warriors? Even though it was long before The Warriors. Again, it's a fun, long track. But is it the greatest Genesis? Not in my mind. But it's really good. After the Ordeal is an incredible instrumental. Again, why? Because it's got an incredible guitar work by Steve Hackett. And then the Cinema Show, which is one of my all-time favorite Genesis tracks. Romeo and Juliet. At the drive. It's just great. Great track at the drive-in, the Cinema Show. I wish they would play that more. They always play like a bit of it, but I think it's a really special song. So that's my feeling about Selling England. Now, you may be interested. Here's some original ads that I had since 1973 or so. That's what Genesis used to look like, if you don't know. And I wish I could have seen them live back in those days. But that's some ads from Selling England by the Pound. Cool stuff. So yeah, really special record, but not even close to my number one Genesis album. Next in line, well, that would be from 1971, Nursery Cryme. I mean, the artwork is still incredible. I mean, they're playing croquet with heads. Is that great? With the lyrics printed in the middle. I love every note of Nursery Cryme. Again, sounds really great in these remastered CD versions, and then the 5.1 versions, which sound even better. And of course, this is the first album that they did with Steve Hackett and Phil Collins. Completely different band, and now they have chops like you can't believe. And boy, what a lineup of songs. The Musical Box, incredible. For Absent Friends, you know, Phil Collins once said, when he was talking about the latest super successful Genesis, that they always wrote short songs, but they just wrote them better as they got later on, and that's why they got big hits. Not in my opinion, because these little pretty songs are so unique, and I think are far superior. You know, For Absent Friends would never be a hit single. Harlequin would never be a hit single. But they're better songs. They're classic Genesis. They're just so melodic and pastoral and beautiful and memorable. But then sometimes they have really big balls as well and really complicated music. Genesis is such a unique band, and that's what they lost in their later days. But they have it in spades here. And even on lesser songs like Seven Stones is just great. The big songs is The Musical Bust, Return to Giant Hogweed, and The Fountain of Salmacis. Harold the Barrel, it's like a 2.5-minute rock song that's just like a single. Well, it wasn't a single, but it's just a novelty track. And it's so much. How could you listen to that and, to me, Illegal Alien? This is like light years better. Love Nursery Cryme. My third favorite Genesis album, really special one from 1975, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I have the original vinyl, and this was the original CD version because I beat the hell out of that vinyl because I played it so much. And then you got to get the 5.1 because it comes with like a video of the slides as you play it. This is just beautiful packaging. Magnificent packaging. You could do a whole show on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Do I need to get into the story? It's really complicated. Peter Gabriel, there was talk about making a movie of it forever. They never did. It's a really interesting journey. It's a concept album, and like all great concept albums, whether it's The Wall or Tommy or Quadrophenia or The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, this is not meant to be picked apart song by song. This is meant to be played from beginning to end. There's some spooky stuff on here. There's a creepy instrumental. It's not the kind of stuff like The Waiting Room. You're not going to play that on its own. It would scare the hell out of you, and you'd be like, what is this? But when you play it from beginning to end, this is a really special album. It's got a number of my favorite Genesis songs on there, whether it's like, oh my God, beautiful instrumental, Hairless Heart, Counting Out Time, which to me would be a hit single. I love that song. It's about him preparing and studying to have his first sexual relationship. It's a great track. The Carpet Crawlers is incredible. Lily White Lilith I love. Anyway, the Lamia is incredible. The Colony of Slipperman is a really fun, adventurous track. I just really love it from beginning to end. And even the ending with it is just a great way to end it really upbeat. The funny thing is the two most popular tracks on this, well, except for the title track I do love, is probably In the Cage and Back in New York City, and those are my two least favorite tracks. They still play In the Cage, and it doesn't do much for me, although it's got a great keyboard solo, which is probably why they play it live. But really special album, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and I think I got some concert ads from around that time too, right? There you go. And you see this? This is an ad from 1975 when they released The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Nothing we could say or do could prepare you for Genesis's newest musical conceptions. And then there's an article. They were still not really a big band, but big enough to get like a full-page article in Rolling Stone magazine in 1975. And then, of course, Peter Gabriel left. Such a bummer. But as much as that was a bummer, my second favorite Genesis album is a Phil Collins led album. And that was the first album they did after Peter Gabriel left, and that is A Trick of the Tail. A Trick of the Tail, I think, is just a masterpiece from beginning to end. When that album came out, and I bought it like the day it came out in 1976, I was like, oh my God, they survived Peter Gabriel, and they put out something that's as good as anything they ever did with Peter Gabriel, pretty much. This album is spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. This is in the 5.1 with the DVD, and there's nothing not perfect about this album. Whether it opens up with Dance on a Volcano is incredible. Entangled is magnificent. You want to talk about classic Genesis and what makes them unique, it's all over this album. I mean, Entangled with the acoustic guitars and the keyboards and the pastoralness and beautiful melodies, but then balls to come in as well. Squonk, great track. Madman Moon, kind of like Entangled, another beautiful acoustic bass track. Robbery, Assault, and Battery, they even had a fun video for that. Ripples, another beautiful melodic acoustic kind of a track. Los Endos is the closing instrumental, which is amazing. They used to do that. It segued with Dance on a Volcano, which is incredible. The only song on here that's not great is the title track, A Trick of the Tail. And it's just kind of, they did a video, so maybe they were trying to get a hit single out of it. It wasn't, and it didn't deserve to be. But that's the weakest track on this album, but it's still a fine track. My second favorite album of all time by Genesis, A Trick of the Tail. What an amazing album. And this is some ads, concert ads, when they were going to tour. And they released that album and showing some of their releases from before. Not quite at the level of Madison Square Garden. Where are they playing? Well, they're playing some arenas, but here in New York, they were playing 2 nights at the Beacon Theater, and in California, the Berkeley Community Center. So, not big enough yet to play the really big places. That would be on the next tour, Wind and Wuthering, as we saw. So, what's my number one favorite Genesis album of all time? Well, the only one that's left, and I showed it to you to start, it's this guy here, Foxtrot. Foxtrot. Great artwork, and you could actually see it continues. There's the artwork from Nursery Cryme in the background. So they continued the artwork from one album to the next. Foxtrot, to me, is a perfect album. Here it is on the 5.1 DVD, CD combination. What can you say? You know, heavy on the mellotron as a lot of their early stuff was, and the bass pedals. Mike Rutherford used to play bass, but bass pedals, and when he kicks those bass pedals in, it envelops you, it hits you in the chest, and it just surrounds you in sound, and it's just an amazing sound between the mellotron and the bass pedals. I mean, Watcher of the Skies is an amazing track. I'm going to briefly talk about Genesis Live. It was originally recorded for the King Biscuit Flower Hour, and they released it. But I'm only showing this because Watcher of the Skies, Get 'Em Out by Friday, both come from this album. Return of the Giant Hogweed and the Music Box come from Nursery Cryme, and the Knife comes from Trespass. They're all better on this live album. This live album actually has superior versions than the studio versions. So I just wanted to point this out. This is a killer record. And if you get the 5.1 version, it's got a whole host of bonus live tracks. But Foxtrot is perfect from beginning to end. There's Get 'Em Out by Friday. Side 2 of the original vinyl is Horizons, which is a little, like a minute plus acoustic song by Steve Hackett that goes into Supper's Ready, the ultimate progressive masterpiece. That's basically the whole side. It's probably my all-time favorite side-length song. It's perfect. I know every note of it. I can still hear it anytime. It's phenomenal. There's 2 other tracks on this album that people don't really mention, and one is Timetable, and that is Peter Gabriel with the piano. Carved oak table tells a tale of times when kings and queens are. It's awesome, and then it goes into a chorus with the drums kicking. Why Why can we never be sure till we die or have killed for an answer? And sorry for my terrible singing, but a great thing about Peter Gabriel is when he sings, he keeps his Britishness, and Genesis is such a British band. He doesn't sing in a faux Italian accent like most British rock stars do. You know, only some. Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull's another one who doesn't. And Peter Gabriel doesn't. And I love his phrasing, and I love the quality of his voice, and I love the way he keeps that British accent. It's perfect for Genesis. And you hear that all over Timetable. The other song on there is Can Utility and the Coastliners, which, if you ever see Steve Hackett live, which I do, he still plays that live, and it's killer. It's one of my favorite Genesis songs. It kind of reminds me of a 6-minute version of Supper's Ready. Not that they're that similar, but it's kind of like an epic song that breaks down into sub parts. And there's a part where the song stops, and then the 12-string acoustic kicks in, and then it goes into this amazing really heavy keyboard solo, and then Mike Rutherford comes in with this amazing bass rumble. It's a phenomenal track. So it's acoustic and heavy, and acoustic and heavy, and kind of like what Supper's Ready does, anthemic, but it does it all in like 6 minutes. Can Utility and the Coastline is a hidden gem from this album that Steve Hackett clearly knows because he still plays it live. From beginning to end, Foxtrot is a perfect album. It is my #1 all-time Genesis album. So I got Foxtrot and Trick of the Tail, The Lamb, Lies Down on Broadway, Nursery Cryme, Selling England by the Pound, Wind and Wuthering. Those are the albums that are in my core. Oh my God, perfect albums. Desert Island disc for me, every single one of them. After that, you got like Trespass, and then there were 3, Duke, From Genesis to Revelations, Invisible Touch, Calling All Stations, Genesis Abacab, and We Can't Dance. There is the history of Genesis for me and for you. What else? Well, there's a lot of box sets. There's a live box set here. I didn't mention it. I talked about Genesis Live. Their other live record, bear with me a second, that I count anyway, is Seconds Out. I think it's one of the greatest live albums ever, bar none, especially in 5.1 sound, but even on the vinyl, it's great. I mean, look at that track list. Can you see that? Squonk, Copper Crows, Robbery, Assault, and Battery, Afterglow, which is so intense originally from Wind and Wuthering. Firth the Fifth, I Know What I Like, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, in the closing section of the musical box from Nursery Cryme. Oh my God, incredible. And then you got a whole side, originally on vinyl, of Supper's Ready. Phil Collins does a phenomenal job. Honestly, you don't miss Peter Gabriel singing it. It's spectacular. And then side 4, The Cinema Show, which I talked about, is one of my favorite tracks of all time, and certainly a highlight of Selling England by the Pound. And then Dance on a Volcano in Los Endos from A Trick of the Tail. This is a spectacular live album. The story is that they kind of edited down Steve Hackett's guitar on there. I don't know. It sounds spectacular to me, and it's one of my Desert Island discs as well. Their other live records, well, you got 3 Sides Live. Which version is this? There's 2 versions of it. Oh, this is the British version. With it's kind of odd. It's really from the Abacab tour, but if you see side 4, you know what? I have it on vinyl. Here it is on vinyl. Side 4, in the American version, is this. It's got Paperlate, you might recall, Me and Virgil, Evidence of Autumn, which is a great track, and Open Door. They're unreleased studio tracks, like B-sides. But if you get the British version of vinyl, which I have, or on this CD, they put more live stuff on there. One for the Vine, which is incredible, and The Fountain of Salmacis, and It, Watch Her Disguise. Side 4 is worth the price of admission, because the rest of it to me is from the Abacab tour, which is just kind of eh. But side 4, it doesn't really go. It's kind of like side 4 should be going on another live record, but whatever. I'll take what I can get. But that's fine. I'm not a fan of these 2 live albums. I'm sure you could have guessed. The Way We Walk, the shorts, and the longs. Again, it's fine for what it is. If you, as obviously I'm in the minority because they sell out stadiums, so a lot more people like the popular Genesis. So there it is, Land of Confusion, None Son of Mine, Jesus, He Knows Me, Throw It on the Wall Away, I Can't Dance, etc. They're fine songs, but they're not unique. And Genesis should be and was a very unique band. They lost that uniqueness, in my opinion. And the Longs, I mean, this is ridiculous. The Longs are the songs I was talking about, and here they do it as a medley. You know, come on. I don't know. I mean, it's got Fading Lights, Domino. These are Home by the Sea, Second Home by the Sea. These are the epics from the modern day Genesis, but it doesn't have that uniqueness like I keep saying. If you love old Genesis like I do, there's tons of bootlegs. And here's a bootleg show from 72 and from 77, which I love. Those original Phil Collins shows like on Second Out. Here's one from 82, not so much of a favorite of mine. From 76, a couple of shows from the Trick of the Tail tour. So there's tons of bootlegs. This is a really famous one, Perfect Life Lyceum. This is a great show that they did on the Duke tour. There's a lot of great shows they did on the Duke tour. They were playing small places. And great set list, and the band was still on fire. This is a great bootleg on vinyl. This is from the And Then There Were Three tour. This is a really, really famous Live from the Mouth of the Monster, it's called. If you're a Genesis fan, you probably know about this bootleg. This is a great one from the Uptown Theater in Chicago. They're killing. They do live ripples there. This is just tremendous. Here's a live album. This is from the Roxy, from the Selling England by the Pound tour, original Trademark of Quality album. Here's an original Genesis live that I picked up in 1974. But better on the CD now, to be honest with you. And this is a cool one. This is Spot the Pigeon, which was what they used to call an EP, a 3-song EP. But this is a really good one. Match of the Day is fun, and Inside and Out has got that classic Genesis sound. Pigeons is kind of a throwaway. But this is cool. Like this one a lot. What else? Genesis Archive 2 is another box that they put out. Not a favorite of mine. It's got the latter day stuff that was on side 4 of the Three Sides Live album, and then some other live stuff. Burning Rope Live is great. Entangled Live is great. Duke's Travels is great. Ripples is great. The Brazilian is great. Actually, it's pretty good, actually, now I'm looking at it. And then some 12-inch stuff, which you don't really need. At least I don't really need. But, good to have if you're a Genesis fanatic. Another Laserdisc I have from the Invisible Touch tour. Definitely not one of my favorite tours from that band. But fun to collect Laserdisc. What else? Greatest hits, kind of a thing that I'll never listen to. Turn It On Again, the hits. That I picked this up because I have to have everything, and they do a new version of the Carpet Crawlers, which doesn't compare to the original. And then I have like some interview discs from the archives. I think that about covers it. So I know it's an extended video, but Genesis, like I said, a really special band for me, and unique in the sense that a band that was my second favorite band that I loved almost as much as the Stones, which is my number one band at that time. And then they just kind of kept going down and down and down, where I still like them and obviously still bought all their albums, but it's the only band that I have that really happened to. But I can still go back and listen to those amazing, amazing albums that I talked about. They're the greatest albums of all time. So if you only know the latter day Genesis, you got to pick up that other stuff because that's what makes them unique. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Please check out the other videos. Please tell your friends. I'm enjoying it, and hopefully people will start watching them and enjoy it as well. Have a great night, and thanks again.